The story begins with some guy lying in bed, but his legs were too long. Just then he remembered that he had, after all, gone through all that and ended up in the world of writers. All of a sudden someone started waking the guy up. He turned around and was asked why he was still in bed at this hour. It was Yuli. She is the best student in her school. The guy looked at her and said she was a real horse. Hearing these words, the girl became very angry and started screaming. She came specifically to find out why those flowers were so red. While the guys were fighting, in the other room some girl was standing in the other room cutting vegetables. That was Yuna. She's a fourth-ranked fighter. Sitting down for dinner, Yuna said that Yuli should be more affectionate. After all, Chinyu is her brother after all, but the girl started to deny it. She started to say that her brother is an enemy, but her mother asked her not to say such words. The boy heard all this and realized that it seemed his sister was right. After all, according to the memories of the first owner, he was not only their enemy, but is also the destroyer of Yuna's husband. 11 years ago, the Devil's Gate opened. And at that time, the entire empire united to exorcise the demon. Though the devil has retreated, he has left behind his descendants, namely our hero. The guy got up from the table, but a glass flew into him. His sister told him afterward that the empire shouldn't have welcomed them bastards with open arms. She added that they should all die. Sitting in your room, the guy realized that her aggression was revenge for destroying her father. Our hero thought that no matter how much hatred people had for him, no one had yet tried to deal with him directly. Chinyu tried to think of what he should do next. He just knew that some system had to be awakened this time. At the same moment, something inexplicable happened. It turned out to be a system activation. The guy looked at the list and asked if that was his ability. In a past life, our hero was destroyed thanks to an altercation with a patient in a hospital. The guy looked around and realized that it looked like there was only one Ant-Yu left on. He thought that he was lucky, because if Yuli was here, she would definitely beat him up. Chin-Yu decided to intimidate Auntie and try out the system at the same time. Our hero had already spread his arms to scare his aunt, but suddenly she picked up a knife. She brought it up to the guy's throat and asked what he was doing. The girl added that our hero's help was not needed here, so let him go get a good night's rest. Suddenly the system started showing the canvas hate scale and the guy realized what it was all about. It turns out Aunt Yuna hates Chin-Yu very much. Chin-Yu turned around and started running towards the door. Walking out of the kitchen he stood outside the doors thinking that probably such a high energy reading was all because of him. He thought and couldn't figure out who Aunt Yu was. But it didn't really matter, because he got a lot out of it. Now he must increase his physical strength index. The system showed that going from level 22 to level 23 would be worth a whole 1000 points. Our hero was at a loss as to where he could get so much energy. The thought occurred to him, maybe show up in front of his aunt more often. But that's not a good idea, as he could die. So he has nothing else to do but retreat. In the evening, the girl changed her clothes in her room. Suddenly, Chin-Yu walked in and said that they needed to talk. The girl turned around and started yelling for our hero not to look at her. But he replied that she had nothing to hide from him. The guy added that he actually had everything she had. Chin-Yu asked, aren't his pectoral muscles bigger than hers? At the same moment, the girl stabbed him in the stomach and told him to die. Our hero's mouth bled and he didn't even realize it. The guy replied that the girl had somehow hit him weakly. In response, she got even more angry and said that he was definitely finished now. The sister started running as hard as she could and asked if he really wanted to die. She threw a powerful punch and added that she would help him with that. Our hero was lying on the ground and heard someone calling him. As it turned out, An ant was looking through the gap between the doors and asked what the guy was doing so late in her daughter's room. Suddenly the system showed hatred for the host. The guy got up from his seat and said he'd better go. He started to leave and wished everyone a good night. My daughter asked if our hero had decided to make such a joke. A little later he took a knife and tried to break it against himself, and he succeeded. The next morning, Chin-yu was walking in some crowded place. Suddenly he felt something strange. As it turns out, this is the epicenter of the energy here. The guy started pointing his middle finger and asked for everyone to look at him. It was left to him to positively educate his faithful companions, for they would not repress their feelings. He realized it wasn't a school, but a real energy field. The girl looked at her brother and didn't understand what was happening to him. She looked at her brother and didn't understand what was going on. Already in the hallway, a girl approached him and asked if he had come to school. It was Zhao Yu, she's his class teacher. Chin-yu wanted to answer her something, but suddenly he noticed something. The system showed that the energy was increased by 55 points. The boy wondered if the teacher was faking it. Suddenly he turned his head and saw that it was a case of someone's jealousy. In that case, he thought of nothing better than to simply fall face down against his classmate's chest. Our hero said that he was still not feeling well, so the teacher replied that she would take him to the infirmary. Chin-yu started to mumble something and said that he didn't want to. The guy looked up and said that he was actually withering with love. The system showed that the energy of the beginning was increasing even more, because the one who was jealous was looking at it all. After a while, school classes were over. Our hero was sitting on a bench and decided to wait for his sister Yuli. Suddenly, the company of that very same student decided to attack him from behind. When they put the bag over his head, the guy realized he could work a couple of moves on them now. With a bag over his head, he began to fight each one in turn. As he walked by, his sister watched and wondered if it was her brother. She immediately started running with the words that no one but her could beat him. As soon as she approached, our hero accidentally hit her. When he heard her voice, he realized his sister had come to his rescue, but it was too late. After a few seconds, our hero was able to deal with all the villains. The boy looked at his sister and wondered if she really didn't let anyone hurt him. He hoped his aunt didn't find out what had happened, or she would surely destroy him. Chin-yu ran up to his sister and asked who beat her up like that and he would avenge her. The system showed that there was also hate energy coming from the girl, but it was much less than that of her classmates. A little while later the guy was carrying her home and thought she was a strange girl. She told her mom at home that she was just distracted at practice and missed a couple of shots. Our hero thought as he worked hard to get extra energy points. He did all sorts of mischief even to his principal. The next day coming to school, the boy was surprised, for there was no one around him. Suddenly he looked away and was surprised at what he saw. The students started cheering for some guy who's gonna fight his sister. The guy decided to see who his sister would get her hands on. Suddenly he saw something that shocked him and he started to run. As it turned out, his sister was hurt so badly that she flew out of the ring. Her opponent asked if she was really that weak. She was after all the daughter of a knight of the Centurion Order. Chin-yu was puzzled how a strong woman like his sister could be seriously injured by a peer. The next day in the morning the boys started to get ready to go somewhere. Our hero wondered if today was some kind of special day. He asked his sister why she decided to wear the knight costume. Did she really want to raise a fuss at school? The girl replied to keep his nose out of her business and he seems to be the only one in the whole school who doesn't know anything. Hearing that the girl wanted to join the knights, Chin-yu was surprised. Did Auntie really give her consent to this? At the finals of choosing a class representative, the leader began to say the terms and conditions. She then announced a tournament among the high school students. This was the final duel for the title of representative of her class in which Yuli participated. Her opponent was the heir to the White Dog Company, his name was Bai Xiao. The girls started attacking him and telling him to be careful. The guy put up a shield, but Yuli already was behind him. At this moment, the opponent decided to activate the magic armor. Because of this, he was able to fend off her blows to his back. The guy realized this was the perfect opportunity to attack. He started running at her and asked if she really wanted to outdo the would-be speed knight. Yuli jumped up and said that he hoped in vain. After that, the girl decided to activate a mounted knight in mid-air. The guy fell to the ground and then the dust began to fly. The girl put her sword to him and asked if the winner had been determined. She then approached the class teacher and they decided to start the announcement. At this moment, Bai Xiao began to rise from his knees. He ran up to the girl and pushed her with all his might outside the ring. Afterward, with a smile on his face, the guy said he won. In the evening, after the fight, Teacher Zhang came to our hero's house and said that she wanted to take Bai Xiao out of the fight. But, the school denied the girl, and so the only thing she could do was to transfer Yuli to another school. Suddenly, Yuna interrupted the girl with her intonation. Lighting a cigarette, the girl began to tell her teacher about a title that had been forbidden to be spoken until 10 years ago. Then, Auntie told the teacher to do her best to help Yuli. Teacher Zhang snaps and says that the school was to blame for everything that happened. Under the memories of the battle, Yuna said that she had promised her daughter that if she took the position of class representative, that girl will do anything to make Yuli a part of the order. But, nothing would come true as Yuli was defeated in that decisive battle. After talking, the aunt and the teacher were about to say goodbye and disperse. But at that moment, someone was quietly approaching them. As it turned out, it was our hero. He extended his hand to the girl and said he would walk her home. After a while, Qin Yu and the teacher were outside her house. At one point, the teacher looked at our hero, and then asked, "What is it?" In response, the guy only inquired for the new representative. The teacher told him that if no one defeated Bai Xiao before tomorrow, he would remain the representative. The protagonist was satisfied with that answer. The guy starts to remember everything that happened in the ring at that moment. An incredible plan was brewing in his head. The next day, in the second grade of high school, Bai Xiao sat and despised all those who looked at him. At this moment, the guy was only thinking about the day when he would be at the very top, and he would have everything he wished for. At one point, someone bursts into the classroom. As it turned out, the troublemaker was once again Qin Yu. He asked at the entrance if Bai Xiao was in class. From such an unexpected appearance, Bai Xiao twitched. He began to shout at our hero, and parallel to this, his hostility increased. The rest of the students in the class also looked at our hero with disapproval. Unexpectedly, Qin Yu reaches out and challenges Bai Xiao. The guy analyzes the level and characteristics of our hero. Tout agrees to this fight. And at the same moment, the protagonist abruptly bends his opponent over and says that he should bow politely before him. Qin Yu enjoyed the fact that his opponent's anger was increasing several times over. After a while, our hero and Bai Xiao were at the playground. The teacher came there because she thought that our hero would leave this world during the battle. Unfortunately, the girl could not do anything, as the fighters had already entered the ring. She would be able to help only when the situation was dire. In the ring, Qin Yu and Bai Xiao met each other's gaze. Bai Xiao was incredibly angry at the guy for that situation. To humiliate the guy, Bai Xiao starts pointing his finger at him and saying that he was a beggar because he came to the fight without a uniform. Our hero also decides to tease his opponent a bit. As a result, Bai Xiao's hostile energy increased by several times. In an instant, the fight began. Bai Xiao activated his abilities, and pointed his spear towards the guy. After a few seconds, Bai Xiao launched a frontal attack. At the time of the punch, he was confident that he would win, since the guy was able to defeat someone like Yu Li. But at one point, all his expectations came crashing down, because the protagonist was able to break Bai Xiao's spear with one simple blow. Through the dense metal, Qin Yu was even able to strike his opponent's stomach. The audience was shocked by this development. They could not believe that our hero was so strong. But, this was not the end at all. Qin Yu began to activate his abilities. And after a few seconds, the guy started throwing a huge number of punches in 1 second. The moment Bai Xiao's health was at its limit, the teacher saw this and tried to stop the duel. The second time, she also failed. For the third time, the girl decided to climb into the ring and with her own strength make our hero stop. And luckily, she succeeded. In the end, Bai Xiao was severely beaten and injured. Teacher Zhang quickly examined the guy and asked the people to quickly take the injured man to the infirmary. After all this, the girl looked at Qin Yu strangely and then, she offered him to become a senior class representative. Later, Teacher Zhao was summoned to the principal's office. There, Principal Li asked the girl what she thought of our hero's action. The woman thought his behavior was justified. After all, it was Bai Xiao's disciple who was the first to break the rules and attack Yu Li. The deputy director wondered why this circumstance gave our hero the right to beat up the man. Old Man Yen was indifferent to this situation. He treated both sides neutrally. Director Li said that Qin Yu couldn't be found innocent, because if they did, it might cause a public outcry. At one point, the teacher said that the main character should become a representative of the high school. Old Man Yang couldn't believe his ears. He abruptly stood up and asked, or was the teacher threatened by other teachers? The woman showed a mark on her hand. As it turned out, it was left by our hero when he grabbed the girl's hand. The three directors looked among themselves. Old Man Yang thought for a while, and told the teacher to make it official so that dogs wouldn't cause them any more trouble. As they left, Zhao's teacher said that the dogs would still come to them. Finally, the girl wished the men good luck and patience. A few hours later, the parents of both boys were already sitting in the principal's office. Director Li didn't want to beat around the bush and so he decided to start the conversation right away. Yu Li couldn't contain her laughter at Bai Xiao's injuries. Finally, her patience broke and the girl started laughing out loud at the fact that the guy had been beaten so badly by her brother. At one point, Bai Xiao's father apologized to the girl and told her to give our hero to the old man for anything. His aunt smiled and turned him down. Then, the grandfather changes his face. He says that if the lady doesn't give him Qin Yu willingly, he will hire a man to destroy the guy later. For some reason, Tata didn't care about the old man's words, but here, Yu Li snapped and ordered the adult uncle to shut his mouth. At one moment, the girl was stopped by Yuna. Yuna said that she regarded the words as a threat to a member of the family of the knighthood chairman. From such a move, all the deputies and including the principal were shocked. To this, the old man said that Qin Yu was a demon, not her child. Old Man Jan smokes a cigarette and realizes that Auntie really cherished our hero. As it turned out, if the relatives of the Knights of the Order were threatened, they were willing to destroy anyone to save them. The girls said they would go since there was no resolution to the problem. As Yuna left, the old man shouted after her, telling her not to forget that she was living with a demon, because one day he might destroy everyone. Hearing those words, the woman immediately stopped. The girl said she had made a bet with a man on whether our hero would be able to awaken his true power and become a monster. Old Man Yan intervened in the conversation and asked what the man had bet on. The woman turned and said that she was betting that the guy would soon become a monster, and even if that happened, she had a plan to make it work. At the same moment, Qin Yu sneezed violently. As it turned out, the teacher sent our hero somewhere without his own consent. During the long trip, our hero was very bored. At one moment, he noticed a neighboring bus in which Yuli was sitting. Suddenly, the girl saw the look in her brother's eyes and realized that something was about to happen. As expected, our hero was up to something. He really wanted to tease his sister. The guy started touching the glass and saying different things about demons. And then, he said one ominous phrase that made the girl very frightened and started crying. Out of fear, Yuli jumped up from her seat and ran to the driver to stop the bus. The bus started going from side to side and because of this it went off route. On the neighboring bus, Chin-yu sat relaxedly in his chair and collected his hate points. And so, after some time, the guy arrives at the place. When he got off the bus, he saw a huge crowd of people. Everyone around them was making noise and talking about their own things. But, this was no obstacle for our hero. He decided to use people profitably to gain more points. In an instant, Chin-yu saw the hostile energy being increased by 1400 times. This energy seemed quite familiar to him. And he was not mistaken. The main character saw his aunt and his sister in front of him. Our hero realized that Auntie had found out what Bai Xiao had done, so she wanted to be kind to him. The boy decided to repay her for the gift. He fearlessly showed a middle finger to his aunt. The guy's sister really didn't like the gesture, and her hostile energy increased by 2 units. Chin-yu continued to walk between people and gather hostile energy from them. At one point, the organizer began his opening speech. According to him, the competition was officially open. This competition, like others of its kind, was supported by 123 companies and orders of knighthood. Also, 24 regiments of knights specially came here as honorable observers. All the people started shouting different words of encouragement. Then, the organizer asked people to applaud to welcome the 1,400 participants. It seemed to our hero that this was another good opportunity to gather as much energy as possible. Next, the organizer said that each participant would have 5 minutes to introduce themselves to the public. Before speaking, the man asked the participants to remember that they were being watched by everyone on their continent. While introducing the other contestants, Chin-yu was thinking about how he should show off. A few minutes later, the main character was already standing on the stage in front of a multitude of spectators. As it turned out, our hero's plan was to piss off all the participants and those watching this tournament. Our hero's sister saw this and immediately covered her face with her hand and said she didn't know him. Principal Lee asked the teacher, or was Chin-yu not overreacting. The teacher also thought that this gesture was unpleasant to everyone. After introductions, the organizer notified everyone of the rules of the competition. This time, all the participants will go to the island for a whole week. For the first 3 days they will be provided with food, but when they run out of it, they will have to find it on their own. Tens of thousands of monsters have been released on the island. They are real killing machines. Also they were divided by strength on the level from 1 to 5. Special energy balls were implanted in the bodies of these monsters, and the more monsters a participant collects, the higher his final rating will be. After this round, the top 100 students will be selected to participate in the final battle. Special balloons would broadcast what was happening. They could also save the lives of participants at critical moments. Also, if someone uses the help of this marvel of technology, soon, they will be disqualified. If a competitor's health deteriorated, the balloon would carry them to the starting area, which was also a reason for disqualification. After his speech, the organizer asked everyone to get ready to depart. One man used a special technique and a special space began to appear beneath him. Then, all participants were enveloped by a white and bright light. And a few seconds later, the field was completely empty. The participants appeared aboard an airplane that was flying high in the sky. Suddenly, Chin-yu hears someone addressing him. As it turned out, absolutely all the participants who were on this plane held a grudge against the protagonist. And a few seconds later, all the passengers on the plane rushed to fight the guy. Our hero's aunt and sister were watching. At this moment, the girls were discussing or Chin-yu would be able to take a good position. The woman was sure that the guy would leave the battlefield. Yuna said that the population was fighting a demon, and that's why our hero wouldn't be able to last long. She also said that the other players would not allow him to take a good position in an environment saturated with demon hatred. Suddenly, the big screen started showing our hero. At that moment he was fighting against the other contestants in the airplane. One guy jumped on Chin-yu's back, and ordered the others to make a demon sacrifice in honor of the fallen warriors. Even though our hero tried to justify himself, the participants still kicked him and tried to destroy him as quickly as possible. In an instant, Chin-yu decided to stop all of this and fight back against his opponents. After a few seconds, the guy started maiming his opponents one by one. While talking to one guy, our hero picked up a parachute and started to put it on. The words that Chin-yu had said earlier made the people on the plane very angry, and forgetting all the security measures. Our hero says goodbye to the others first. And then, he fist destroys the fuselage of an airplane. He, and everyone else involved jumped out of the plane. Onlookers were in shock watching this situation. Those without a parachute, the air screamed for help and rescue. The falling ones, immediately activated the orb, and because of that, they were automatically eliminated from this competition. The audience was shocked by what they had just seen. Some did not like the tricks that the main character did. After a while, Chin-yu lands in the mountainous area of the arena. The sister was very happy for the guy when he successfully landed on the ground. There was a man sitting next to her, and he was obviously very disappointed about it. He couldn't believe that his school's elite were so easily disqualified from the competition. Suddenly, the audience started screaming that our hero would soon be finished. All because a level 3 ghost bull was targeting him. And ironically, Chin-yu didn't notice him. Ignoring the bull, the guy decides which road he should take. As it turned out, there were two bulls. They immediately started attacking Chin-yu while he was thinking of where to go. A few seconds later, a loud sound rang out in the vicinity of the forest, causing all the birds to fly upwards. Our hero didn't even realize that he had been attacked by two large bulls. The attack seemed so weak to him that he thought they were insects. Turning around, the guy sees two destroyed bulls that were clearly unconscious. In the assembly hall, the principals were speechless when they saw this. They couldn't remember at what point Chin-yu had become so strong. The men realized that our hero was only incredibly strong because he was raised by Yuna, and she's a hero of the Night Order. Suddenly, Chin-yu started to eat something. At first, the directors didn't pay attention to it as they were busy talking to Zhao. But looking closer, they saw the guy nonchalantly eating balls of energy. The directors had no faces. After this situation, they were in incredible shock. As it turned out, Chin-yu was oblivious to the rules and decided to eat the ball of energy. He thought he couldn't eat bull meat. Having had a hearty lunch, our hero decides to go out and earn points. First, he stole cubs from the bear. Then, he plucked out the tiger's sharp fangs with wire cutters. Then, he dared to roast the eagle's child. The audience couldn't believe what they were seeing. Some were highly annoyed by our hero's actions. After eating the eggs, Chin-yu decides to compete with the snake and crocodile. During this fight, the main character turns his head to the side and in the grass he sees the ears of a dog. Mistaking them for a new next opponent, Chin-yu decides to pull them. And at the moment when our hero started pulling the ears, he saw that it was not a dog at all, but a girl with dog ears. Suddenly, the girl started screaming in unbearable pain. Our hero was very much frightened by this. And at these cries, the rest of the girl's sisters came running. Looking at the whole situation from a very unconventional angle. The girls realized that Chinyu wanted to make their sister something unknown. And so, the sisters immediately started attacking our hero without even understanding the situation. Chinyu saw this, and then he abruptly stood up and tried to explain to the girls that there was a misunderstanding. After a while, the sisters still managed to bring our incredibly strong hero to the ground. But, only the girls thought so. In fact, the sisters destroyed the animals that were on Chinyu. The girls were shocked when they saw what happened next. Chinyu easily freed himself from the so-called trap, and holding the beasts in his hands, the guy asked the sisters or anyone knew how to cook. The girls answered in chorus that they all knew how to do it. Putting the animals in the hands of the sisters, our hero began to watch as they began to skillfully strip her. The guy was incredibly interesting to watch the whole process. At some point he thought he was watching a cooking show. The guy truly believed that the food prepared by these girls would be incredibly delicious and nourishing. But all his expectations came to an end, because the sisters had prepared a very bad dish that was impossible to eat. Just by looking at this dish, Chinyu saw that the cooked crocodile was even angrier at him than when he was alive. Suddenly, the sisters crowded around the guy and asked him why he didn't eat. Chinyu unashamedly said that the dish was terrible. Despite the statement, the girls continued to insist that the guy taste their dish. Chinyu didn't want to eat it, so he started offering the same dish to his sisters. The girls absolutely refused to eat it. And during their little conflict, behind him, Chinyu hears a strange voice. Turning sharply to the source of the sound, the guy sees a red and large sword flying at him. From this frontal attack, our hero easily dodged. And after a few moments, he saw the girl in front of him who had attacked him. The woman quickly drew her sword back and grabbed it in her hand. The protagonist still couldn't understand what was going on. And taking advantage of that, the fifth sister started attacking the guy again. The girl jumped up sharply and started attacking the guy from the air. In an instant, Chinyu comes up with an ingenious plan and grabs Coco's little sister. The guy covered himself with it to keep the girl from hitting him. As expected, his plan succeeded and the first sister miraculously cut a few hairs off her sister's head. From this action, the girl began to hate the protagonist very much. The Ko sis got really scared and started pulling out of the guy's arms. Chinyu didn't think long before throwing the little girl at her sisters. Luckily, those were able to catch the little sister and hold her in their arms. Even after that, Chinyu didn't calm down. He began to tease the girls by comparing them to dachshunds. The first sister didn't want to take this abuse any longer, so she decided to end it with our hero. The girl used one stratagem. She extended her grip, thereby turning his sword into a long and sharp spear. The first sister started to attack Chinyu without slowing down, but he was able to easily dodge this attack. Suddenly, the girl ordered her sisters to group into one squad. Chinyu started to panic for some reason. He was pinned against a tree and surrounded by girls. But, the boy decided not to give up so easily. He grabbed the tree behind him tightly and ripped it out of the ground with roots, thus driving the girls apart. The first sister decided to deal with the guy on her own. She realized that he had a lot of power, so she decided to act carefully. The girl was swinging a spear, and our hero was setting a tree under it. From the outside it looked like sharpening a huge pencil. When the girl's blades almost reached our hero, the guy decided to stop her quickly before she did any damage to him. A huge piece of wood came face to face with a sharp spear. As it turned out, the tree won since the sister couldn't get her spear out. Our hero was very happy that he was able to stop those pesky attacks. And without a moment's hesitation, he tossed the tree somewhere to the side with the girl. In flight, sister began to use one special technique of hitting the ground. And after a few seconds, all the small pebbles and pieces of earth began to strive towards our hero. Chinyu realizes that he can't simply repel this attack, so he also decides to use a technique that will help him defend himself against the falling rocks. As expected, this technique helped him, and all the flying stones simply bounced off the body of our hero. Auntie and Yuli were still watching what was happening. Yuna saw that the girl had talent, because at such an age, such an indicator was rare. Yuli watched this incredible attack. In the moment, she even worried about her brother. Fortunately, Qin Yu was able to repel all of the girl's attacks. The first sister couldn't understand why the guy was still standing on his feet. For a second she thought it was because Qin Yu was a devil child. Qin Yu realizes that that girl's strength was annihilating, and so, he decides not to give her a chance to attack again. After a few seconds, the protagonist begins a frontal attack, because he has already decided that he will fight only in close combat. The first sister didn't want to let our hero get too close. The girl gripped the ground harder. And with her power, she decides to attack the guy with her magic. The first sister threw her hands up in the air and summoned a large sea wave of sand, rocks and twigs. Qin Yu was able to dodge this annihilating attack with a simple upward jump without any problems. Seeing this, the girl first waited for the main character to come even closer to her, and then, she pointed a giant drill at him. Qin Yu once again came up with something brilliant. The boy swung his foot. And with all his might he hit a tree pole, which he channeled into an incredibly powerful drill. As a result, a thick smoke formed at the collision site. The girl immediately thought that with this smoke, Qin Yu was trying to deceive her. But, this trick wouldn't work on her as she is a dog and has a sharp and good sense of smell. When the girl smelled the guy's scent, she immediately swung her sword to cut off his head. But, the first sister realized too late that she had been deceived, as she cut off the head of the already destroyed crocodile. Suddenly, Qin Yu was behind the girl. He grabbed her and said that she had lost. The audience absolutely did not like the strategy followed by the protagonist, most even condemned his actions. Yuli and Yuna were pleasantly surprised. Yuna couldn't even believe that Qin Yu possessed such strength. Yuna turned her head and looked at her joyful daughter. The woman wondered about the identity of our hero. Turning her head to the screen, Yuna saw the participants sitting and warming themselves by the fire. Qin Yu took that incredible dish and served it to the first sister. He proved to her that the sisters were trying to destroy it. The girl was nervous and said that looks can often be deceiving. Hearing this, Qin Yu angrily suggests that the girl try this dish herself. At this point, the first sister wanted to divert our hero's attention, so she said she knew where they could get some decent food. But, Qin Yu didn't listen to her. He ruthlessly threw the contents of the bowl into the girl's mouth. As expected, the food was not at all edible, and so the sister became very sick in a moment. On the third day of the challenge, the staff landed to give all the participants food, but first, the boys decided to have some refreshment before going out. One of the staff members suggested that his friends eat some kebabs. But, he didn't have time to take a bite of it, as the kebab disappeared somewhere in a flash. The woman saw a little girl sitting in a tree, and in her teeth was that cold kebab. As it turned out, that girl was Coco's sister, and she really liked that meat. A girl from the staff tried to somehow take the food out of the girl's hands. But, she didn't succeed, as she was cut off by our hero in a second. Now that the entire staff was unconscious, the boys could get enough to eat the food, of which there was plenty. The friends immediately started roasting chicken legs on the fire. They felt like they were in paradise, as there was a lot of untouched food here. Sister Yo-Yo looked at the staff's lying body. She thought it was all very strange, even though they had plenty of food right now. Suddenly, the girls saw something that horrified her. After taking a closer look, Sister Yo-Yo saw the passport of one of the company's employees on the ground. She briefly notified the sisters and Qin Yu about it. The first sister was horrified, but our hero never realized what was wrong. The girl decided to quickly fill her basket with food and get out of here as soon as possible. But it looks like they're already too late. Just when Sister Yo-Yo thought that they were finished, Chinyu came up to her and said that they had the probability of picking up a lot more food. At the same moment, another squad was heading to a supply delivery point. One of the squad members thought it was useless for them to go there. The squad leader said that the staff would not allow them to starve to death, so they should try to get food. A few minutes later, the squad arrived at the supply point. All the men were very pleased when they saw the crates of food. The leader greeted the staff and told them why they were here. They were met by a cross-dressed Chinyu. He also greeted the participants. The leader didn't think long before asking for food for himself and his squad. Suddenly, Chinyu asked the people who wanted to eat what rank of food they would like to take. Participants were shocked and they learned that food had classes and ranks. Our hero put out the food by ranks and asked the participants to hurry up and choose one of them. Absolutely everyone unanimously chose the D-ranked food, as there were very nourishing foods as well as alcohol. And then, the guy asked the participants for 4 balls of energy as payment for the meal. The group leader was very surprised when he heard that the food had to be paid for. Chinyu said that it was a must. After all, free cheese only lay in a mousetrap. The man get the food for free, insinuating that they were participants, that is, in charge of this game. Hearing this, the main character pulls out an A-rank set and says that this set was free for them. The leader still didn't want to give up the balls. After all, it was all they had collected in the last 3 days. The sisters were watching from the sidelines. They hoped that Chinyu would be able to do everything. Our hero was also very hopeful that the leader would agree to his terms. Suddenly, the guy turns around because he didn't think he'd find anyone so quickly. The leader of the group notices this. He asks our hero about his words, but he says he heard him. The leader wanted very badly to know what our hero was talking about, and so he would give him anything to find out the information. Hearing this, Chinyu agrees to the man's terms. The guy sets the bottles aside and starts delivering an impromptu speech. First, he asked the people or whether they knew why the resources were divided into ranks. All the participants stood still and did not understand what he was talking about. And then Chinyu tells that if they each spend an energy ball on it, they will get double the reward at the end of the game. The sisters, who were watching from the sidelines, were happy that our hero had succeeded. The guys were very excited to hear this information, and to be completely sure, they asked if it was all true. Our hero, with a sly expression on his face, confirmed the words of the participants, and then he promised them that he would not tell anyone about it. The leader was very surprised when it came to the others. Chinyu then discreetly pointed behind the guy's back. When the man turned his head around, he saw the rest of the tournament's participants running towards them. And without thinking long, he gave all 4 balls of energy to our hero in exchange for food. The girls watched from the sidelines and marveled at how the guy did it. The linked staff also observed all of this. In the assembly hall, the principals were yelled at by the organizers of this event. They were perplexed that their student could tie up their staff and also cheat other participants. Director Lee said it wasn't a hoax, but just a resource exchange. And his deputy said that the organizers should be happy that at least someone was able to think of it. Old Man Yang was also not left out. He said that if it was against the rules, the game would have been stopped and Chinyu would have long been eliminated from the game. The organizers watched as Chinyu gathered large lines to feed all the participants. And once again, when a guy was able to sell food, someone started screaming about players being cheated. Upon hearing this, the participants were at a loss for words. Another employee who had his mouth untied fell out of the closet, and so he was able to tell the other participants about Chinyu's machinations. Once everyone heard the truth, their hatred and anger began to increase several hundredfold. And when they wanted to deal with the cheaters, they were already gone. The boys took all the balloons and started running away to wherever they were going. Along the way, our hero uncloaks and looks at his balance of remaining energy. One of the sisters asked the guy how many points he had managed to collect, but Chin-yu didn't want to tell her anything. Suddenly, a spear started flying straight at them, out of nowhere. The first sister masterfully repelled this unexpected and insidious attack. The spear spun several times. And a few seconds later, it was back in the owner's hands. In front of the guys there were new opponents, who from the looks of it were very strong. The girl that suddenly attacked the guys said that her sister had a great reaction, and that she would be sorry to destroy her. Gradually, Chin-yu could feel the hostility towards him increasing each time. At that moment, his sister came up to him and told him that his opponent was a snake and a rhinoceros. The snakes were good at close combat, but the rhinos had a huge reserve of strength. But as it turned out, the strongest girl of those three was the one standing in the middle. The women began to divide their opponents. The snake offered the strongest one to fight with our hero, but she said that Chin-yu was not interested in her. In the end, the girls decided that the snake woman would fight against our hero, and the other girls would take care of the sisters. After discussing the plan, the snake woman approached the guy. The first sister immediately ordered the others to stay out of the fight under no circumstances. The woman started seducing the guy and saying she really liked him. And then, she took a very unusual stance. As expected, Chin-yu was seduced. He couldn't resist such a hot woman. The girl got into a normal position and said that now, they would play. And at the same moment, she abruptly started attacking the guy. The sister was scared shitless when she saw it. The girl warned our hero at the last moment. But, Chin-yu was not so simple, he easily grabbed the spear. And then, he suggested his opponent play to the first tiers. Pulling the girl closer to him. Chin-yu calls her aunt. At those words, the girl becomes enraged, and her hostile energy increases 666 times. Then, the girl jumped aside and tried to strike with her long tail, but, she failed as Chin-yu was able to dodge the attack. Over all of this, the first sister watched from the sidelines. The girl tried to warn the boy of the danger, though she herself did not know what was behind her. The rhino woman turned into a giant, and then she swung her large arms around. As soon as the sister turned around, it was too late. The giantess's hands were already centimeters from her head. A few seconds later, a huge sound resounded in the vicinity of the forest. At the same time, Chin-yu sitting by the tree said that towards him, the woman was cruel. The guy didn't know what to do at all. At the same moment, the snake woman grabbed her spear and tried to attack the guy again. When the spear is about to reach the guy's neck, Chin-yu decides to try to improve his body with the system. Chin-yu dodges attacks with ease while improving his dynamic vision at the same time. And then, he swung his arm with all his strength in his fist. That punch had to be perfect. But, suddenly, the guy realized he'd missed. He couldn't even believe it at first, but his bloody hand said it all. The flexible body of the descendants of the serpent tribe robbed our hero of most of his strength. It was all about the girl's slippery scales. Because of this, the direction of the blow changed and Chin-yu hurt his hand on the spear. The snake woman standing across from the guy complimented him on that punch. For a second, she even felt sorry that she was born to destroy people like our hero. Now, this woman aimed for the main character's legs. She took a special stance. And then, with all her might, she sprinted straight for the guy. Chin-yu thought of a plan in his head and started running towards the tree. The girl noticed this and thought that our hero had gotten cold feet. But as it turned out, it wasn't like that at all. Chin-yu used his incredible strength to rip the tree with roots out of the ground. And then, he threw it right at the girl. Since this woman was a snake, she easily dodged this attack. And then, the girl rushed straight to the young man's feet. The guy saw too late that the girl was too close. The woman turned out to be ruthless, and no matter what she thrust her spear right between the guy's legs. Suddenly, she saw the sharp part of her spear fly off somewhere. The girl had absolutely no idea what was going on here. And then, she was grabbed by the neck. Qin Yu, holding the girl in his hand, told her that he only threw the tree to distract her and attack from below. What amazed the girl the most was that Qin Yu was able to repel her attack with the men's most vulnerable spot. To this, our hero said he had balls of steel. Then, he looked angrily at the girl and asked her what to do with it. The first sister had already been fighting against the mysterious girl for a long time. But still, there was no way she could handle her, the difference in strength was too great. The other girl, on the other hand, was very bored fighting her sister. As for her, the doggy was very slow and weak. Suddenly, her gaze is drawn to her friend lying on the ground. The girl quickly runs up to her and lifts her head. She asked the snake what had happened to her. With a smile on her face, the snake woman said that she could no longer continue the battle for victory. The hooded girl was at a loss as to what such a horror the protagonist could do to her friend. The sisters were also surprised that Qin Yu did this. At the same moment, Qin Yu approaches the girls. He says he was just using his new technique. He tells how a new world suddenly opened up to him. The hooded girl lowered her head and said that Qin Yu was worthy of becoming her opponent. And adopting an unusual stoicism, the girl asked our hero to attack her first. Before the attack, the guy insinuated to himself that he could handle it. Suddenly, Tang Lian begins to whirl around and head towards our hero. Stepping closer to him, she calls her name. Qin Yu praised the girl for her skills and said that she was good. He liked the way Tang Lian looked in the assassin's costume. The girl was angry that our hero tried to fight her alone. And with fury in her eyes, she stabs the guy. Sitting in the bushes, the sisters were watching from the sidelines. They shouted to him that this girl was not so simple. After all, from childhood, she was raised to be a killing machine. As expected, Tang Lian hurt our hero's leg when he let his guard down. And after a few seconds, she tore right at him with words of resignation. Qin Yu looked at his injured leg and thought about this girl's speed and stamina. Suddenly, behind him, he saw something strange. And after a few seconds, the girl is already next to the guy. Qin Yu realized that his opponent's speed greatly surpassed him. It was hard for him to resist, also he couldn't react to her attacks. Our hero was taking more and more damage with each passing second. Not only the sisters, but also teacher Zhao was watching these. The principals of the other schools were incredibly happy about what was happening now. They wanted the girl to expel our hero from the game as soon as possible. Yuli was also worried about her brother. She didn't understand how he could lose to anyone but her. Yuna reassured her daughter by asking her to look at the guy's face. What was evident from it was that the protagonist must have had some sort of plan. In his head, Qin Yu pondered over many different options, but there was only one way to fix the situation. After a few seconds, Qin Yu starts teasing the girl, calling her old lady and talentless. The guy wanted Tang Lian to destroy him quickly. The audience was shocked at what they saw and what they heard. The girl's attack stopped, but our hero's insults did not. He continued to insult the girl. Suddenly, a yellow glow enveloped the guy. It was more like threads. And despite the pain and damage he received, our hero still continued to insult the girl. Yuli clung to her mom even more and started asking her what they should do. The girl was already thinking of buying her brother a coffin. Yuna watched the fight intently. She couldn't understand what the protagonist was up to for a long time. At one point, the guy gets his way. He sees how the hostility towards him has gradually increased. But, this was too little too late for him. Chinyu didn't understand why this girl didn't react to his insults. The guy decided not to give up. If he continued, this way he could turn defeat into absolute victory. And at one point, a very good opportunity came his way. With the next attack, the guy saw the woman slow down. And using this opportunity, our hero begins to improve his body. And after a few seconds, Chinyu strikes the girl. Tang Lien saw that this strike was very fast compared to the past ones. Even her weapon didn't help the girl escape this attack. And the guy hits her right in the face. From the force of the blow, the girl flies back a few meters. Then, Chinyu grabbed her leg. And jumping a decent distance, he throws the girl to the ground. Tang Lien was lying on the ground with no strength or energy. Suddenly, she saw Chinyu flying at her from above. And the guy used the elbow destroyer technique to finish the girl off. But, our hero failed, as his attack was repelled by a female rhinoceros. From this attack, the protagonist flew back a few meters. Pulling back the log, the woman asked the guy how dare he hurt her sister. The rhino girl was furious. She wanted to destroy the protagonist very badly. Tang Lien asked her not to do that. But despite all her sister's words, the girl still rushed into battle. And using her power, she delivered a punch to the guy's jaw. But he didn't even move a finger, because his body was pumped up and now he felt almost no pain. The woman decided to activate her powers and use them to do some damage to the guy. The sisters were very worried about the guy and they told him with glee to be careful. The rhinoceros girl started throwing many consecutive punches, and parallel to that, her hostile energy was increasing. The protagonist dodged every attack of his opponent. The rhino woman was already furious and so she decided to give the guy a crushing blow. And the moment her hand had not yet reached our hero's face, Chinyu caught her. And in one move, destroyed all the armor the girl was wearing. The woman very much disliked what the main character did. When Chinyu was admiring the girl behind him, a spear was already flying at him. Our hero masterfully dodged this attack. Turning around, the guy saw both girls start to slowly walk away from the battlefield. Lastly, Tang Lien told the guy that she remembered him. After this battle, our hero was approached by his sisters and praised for his incredible work. The protagonist's body felt pain, but still he could find the strength to recover faster. After recovering, Chinyu decides to go raise his ranking. The sisters immediately agreed with the guy and ran after him. Coming to the center of the zone, the guys watched as endless battles were fought there. The participants of the game fought against the largemouth monsters. Sitting in the bushes, the sister asked the guy or should they go there. Chinyu told the girls not to rush into it. After all, there were many people in the center, and the boss should appear soon. And right after those words, a level 5 monster appears in the center of events. It was the queen of the evil bugs. The first sister was sure that there was no way the guy could fight her, but Chinyu said they wouldn't fight her yet. At first the girl did not understand at all what our hero was talking about. But then, she saw a guy start yelling to the rest of the contestants that after destroying the boss, they'd get a bunch of energy. The men paid attention to the boy's words and immediately thought about it. And a few seconds later, a huge number of participants rushed into battle against a ruthless and incredibly strong boss. They even started attacking her at the same time. But it didn't help them in any way, as the girl had no trouble throwing the men apart. Even magic was used against the boss. But it didn't help them either. Our hero watched this for a long time. He could not understand why the boss did not react at all to the attacks. For a moment, Chinyu thought that the girl didn't have a weak spot. But looking closely, he saw how the spider had a large purple crystal on its back. After analyzing this situation, Chinyu tells the first sister that he has a plan matured. He later tells his sister. Hearing him, the girl immediately said that the guy would be in danger, but our hero didn't care, he just wanted to defeat the monster. The guy slowly but surely began to approach the battlefield. He snatched someone's spear from his hands. And about jumping on the heads of your rivals. The guy jumps up high. And then with all his might he throws the spear straight at the girl. As expected, the spear hits right into the boss's hand, and seeing this, Chinyu gives a signal to Xiao Xiao's sister. Xiao Xiao flies high up and casts an earth spell, which is sure to go straight into the clothes on the boss's back. From the unbearable pain, the girl begins to scream, and a yellow light shone through from the through holes. Once some of the clothes were damaged, Chinyu notices the very same crystal. And using his power, the guy shatters this crystal with his fist. Xiao Xiao praised our hero for his work and said that he was right. But in a flash, her attention is caught by something behind her. When Xiao Xiao turned around, she saw the boss had turned into a monster, and with her big mouth, she wanted to swallow our hero. The protagonist could understand absolutely nothing at that moment. And because of that, the boss grabbed the guy's head with her mouth. The monster has already practically consumed our hero completely. The guy fought back, but the monster was still stronger than him several times over. But, the protagonist was not one to give up so easily. Despite the unbearable pain, he still activated his abilities. And somehow managed to get out of Spider-Woman's chokehold. Xiao Xiao immediately ran up to Chinyu and asked him to control the amount of energy released. But, the protagonist couldn't hear her words as he was without strength, because of which he started falling towards the girl. Chinyu fell right on top of the girl, and the girl managed to grab him in time. Old Man Yang and Teacher Zhao were watching. The old man immediately ordered the medics to take our hero away from the battlefield. Yuli, when she saw this, she immediately became very worried about her brother. The main character woke up already in the hospital on a bed, his whole body was covered with bandages, and in front of him stood a nurse. When the girl saw that the guy was awake, she immediately went over to him and said she would get a doctor over here. By this time, Chinyu stood up and began to examine his bandaged body. He opened his information and saw that he now had the ability to use demonic armor. This news made the boy very happy. Now he was convinced that he was a real demon. When Chinyu came to his senses, he immediately wants to try out his new skill. A second later, his body was overflowing with tremendous power. And at one point, his bandage just ripped. And a demonic armor appeared on his middle finger. Chinyu looked at this tiny armor for a long time. And then he started to get really angry about it. Fortunately, that wasn't all, because for extra points, the main character could buy more armor. A few seconds later, the guy already had an entire armor-covered palm. And after a few more seconds, his left arm was completely covered in demonic armor. The moment our hero wanted to test the power of his attack, a doctor walked into his office along with a nurse. For some reason, Chinyu decided to try out his new technique on the nurse, causing her to blush slightly. Wallpaper men loved this prank. Then, the doctor put Chinyu in the bed and began to examine his body. In the end, most of his body was completely restored. But as it turned out, our hero could leave the hospital only in a month. He was not at all happy with this arrangement. But, the doctor couldn't do anything about it, and our hero still needed to stay in the hospital. Looking at the system window, Chinyu thought of some way he could get out of the hospital faster. Suddenly, he finds one very useful ability for him, but to use it, the guy will need 5,000 points of energy. Our hero decided to go to incredible lengths to get those glasses. The guy touched the nurse's intimate place. In her embarrassment, the girl was very angry with the guy. In his defense, Chinyu said that he wanted to pull his arm, and for this daring act, the guy only got 100 points. The nurse took great offense to the guy and said he would now be handled by a nurse. At some point, Chin-yu pondered over something. In the hallway, nurses walked carelessly by sick patients. Suddenly, all of them were forced to cover themselves and embarrassed by Chin-yu's actions. Absolutely all the girls in this aisle felt hostility towards the protagonist. As it turned out, Chin-yu was able to see absolutely all of the nurses' panties. Of course, the sick patients were pleased with such antics. But that wasn't all, our hero also did something with men. A few days later, in the arena where the contest was held, Yuli was sad about her brother being eliminated from the competition. And suddenly, the girl heard her brother's name being announced over the microphone. Also the organizer said that he was going back into the game. Yuli was shocked by what she heard. She immediately started asking her mom a lot of questions about it. At the same moment, on the field, the protagonist was walking carefree. Yuli couldn't believe it. She also didn't understand what her older brother was up to.